They said it wouldn't be Thanksgiving without me. They said, "Come, Grandma, we need you here." So, I did what I've always done. I came. I packed my best cardigan, the navy one with the pearl buttons. I packed my old pie dish, the one that's seen more holidays than half the people at that table. And I packed every ounce of hope still left in my bones. But as I stood under the arrival sign at Minneapolis St. Paul, wheeled suitcase by my side, coat folded neatly over one arm, people bustled past me carrying balloons, flowers, welcome, signs, arms outstretched towards someone they loved. And I just stood there. 42 minutes, 2 text rereads, 1 social media post that shattered what was left of me. Because there they were, at the table, glasses raised, smiles wide, and not a single chair left for me. This is not a story about bitterness. This is about the moment a woman stopped waiting to be remembered, and started remembering herself. Asterisk, 3 days before my flight, the phone rang. Greg never called without a reason, not for years, not unless it was a birthday reminder, a medical bill, or a quick favor masked in warmth. But this time, his voice was sweet, too sweet. "Hey Mom, the kids were just asking about you. We thought maybe you'd want to join us for Thanksgiving this year. Wouldn't feel right without you." That last part, "wouldn't feel right without you." It cracked something open, because it had been so long since anyone made me feel wanted, needed, sure, useful, always, but wanted. That's different. That stays with you. So I said yes. I didn't ask if they'd cover the flight. I didn't expect an offer. Instead, I pulled out the envelope of cash I'd been saving in the back of my recipe book, Christmas money, emergency fund. I figured this counted. That night, I booked a ticket, non-stop, early morning. I even paid an extra $12 for extra leg room. Silly, I know, but if I was going to fold myself into an airplane seat to go be someone's beloved, I wanted just a little bit of space. Asterisk, the next day, I went shopping. 2 books for the kids, a box of the dark chocolate truffles Malene used to like, and for myself, a cardigan, navy blue, soft wool, the kind that drapes just right at the hips. The kind you wear when you want to look like you belong in the family. Photo I packed 3 days early. Checked the weather in Minneapolis. Set the thermostat low. Took the trash out early. Didn't tell my bridge group I was leaving. They'd asked questions. Maybe a part of me didn't want to jinx it. It had been so long since someone said, "Come, we want you here." Asterisk, I flew out Thanksgiving morning. The airport was buzzing with soft chaos, roller bags clicking, kids crying, overhead announcements layering over each other like static. I smiled at a baby across the aisle, shared a nod with another older woman reading a paperback. Both of us wore the same look, hands folded, waiting. Women with stories unspoken. When the plane landed, I brushed crumbs from my lap, fixed my collar, pulled on my good shoes, black, small, heel. I wanted to look like someone you want to see arrive. The walk from baggage claim felt long. Maybe it was the weight of the suitcase. Or maybe it was the hope getting heavier by the second. At gate 3A, I stood with my suitcase, by my side, coat draped neatly over one arm, families hugged, balloons bounced, welcome signs bobbed in the air. Everyone was being claimed. I stood like a misplaced package, alone. Flight had landed 42 minutes ago. I checked twice. I reread the text again. "We'll be there. Kids can't wait to see you," my reply had said. "Flight lands at 3:10. Can't wait to hug everyone." No answer. I didn't sit. I didn't want to look like someone who'd been forgotten. Then my phone buzzed. Not a text. Not a call. A social media notification. Sometimes they post pictures before they remember to tell me something. So I opened it, and that's when everything in me just stilled. Asterisk, 3 days before the flight. The call came. Greg's name lit up my phone screen, unexpected and unfamiliar at that hour. My son rarely called, not unless it was to relay a birthday reminder or a polite check-in during tax season. But this time, his voice was syrupy, oddly cheerful, like a child rehearsing good news for an adult. "Hey Mom," he said, "you doing anything for Thanksgiving?" I blinked, standing in the middle of my small kitchen with a mug of chamomile cooling in my hand. "I was planning to stay home," I said. "Roast a little chicken, maybe bake a pie if my hands cooperate. Watch something old and soft on the TV. Just me and the radio." He paused. I could hear it. The sound of calculations, not sentiment. "Well," he said eventually, "the kids were asking about you." Thought maybe you'd like to come here. This year, everyone's gonna be together. Wouldn't feel right without you. Wouldn't feel right without you. Those words slipped under my skin and stayed there. It had been a long, long time since I'd felt truly wanted. Not needed. I had always been needed, but wanted. There's a difference. I'd forgotten how it felt to be invited with joy, not obligation. So I said yes. Of course I said yes. Greg didn't offer to book the ticket, didn't mention covering the cost, but I didn't ask. I had that envelope, the Christmas money tucked away in my dresser drawer for emergencies, and I decided this counted. That evening, I stared at my computer screen until the cursor blinked itself into meaning. A round-trip flight from Boston to Minneapolis. Reasonably priced. I paid the extra $12 for a seat with more legroom, a small indulgence for old knees, and the illusion of luxury. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I shopped for gifts, a chapter book for Elliot, who liked riddles, a watercolor kit for Ruby, who once sent me a card painted with lopsided flowers, and a box of dark chocolate truffles for Irene. I didn't know if she still liked them, but it felt nice to pretend I remembered something sweet about her. And then I did something even stranger. I bought something for myself. A navy blue cardigan, soft wool. It draped just right, the kind you wear when you want to blend into a room, but still feel like you belong in the picture. I packed 3 days ahead, checked the weather in Minneapolis, set the thermostat low, took the trash out early. I didn't tell anyone I was going, not my neighbors, not the bridge ladies. They'd only ask questions, and I didn't want to jinx it. When Thanksgiving morning arrived, I boarded my flight with a small suitcase and a hopeful heart. The plane was crowded, all those families heading toward their versions of warmth. I sat beside a baby in pink socks and an older woman with a mystery novel. We didn't speak, but we didn't need to. Our silence was companionable. The kind women of a certain age were like a coat. When we landed, I took my time, smoothed my skirt, brushed crumbs from my lap, slipped into my good shoes, the black ones with a sensible heel. I wanted to look like someone you'd be happy to pick up at the curb, the kind of woman you're proud to say is yours. I reached the arrivals gate, pulled my coat over one arm, and waited. At first, I watched every face. Each passing minute carried the heartbeat of anticipation, but then, as the crowd thinned, the minutes grew longer, thicker, people reuniting, kids running into arms, balloons bouncing, a father held up a welcome home, Emily sign with 3 hearts. And I stood there, still, unclaimed. I checked the flight board. My plane had landed 42 minutes ago. I reread Meline's text. We'll be there. Kids can't wait to see you. I had responded. Flight lands 3:10. Can't wait to hug everyone. No reply. Still, I waited. I didn't sit. Sitting felt like surrender, like becoming the woman who had clearly been forgotten. I stood, coat over one arm, my cardigan pristine, suitcase upright, like a misplaced package waiting for its rightful owner. At some point, my phone buzzed. Not a call, not even a text, a social media notification. My chest tightened. Because sometimes that's where my family posts before they remember to tell me. I opened the app, and there they were. Greg in the navy sweater I mailed him last Christmas. Meline glowing, tan, and smiling. The kids elbow to elbow at a table laden with candles, turkey, mashed potatoes, and a pie. A pie that wasn't mine. The caption read, "Full house, full hearts. Happy Thanksgiving from our family to yours." I studied the photo. There was no mistake. There was no seat left for me at that table. Asterisk. I didn't cry. Not then. There was no dramatic gasp or public breakdown. Just a slow, silent moment where the world around me seemed to keep moving, and I stopped. I stood there, in the middle of the airport crowd, coat still draped over one arm, phone in hand, staring at that photo. They hadn't forgotten me. They had simply excluded me, intentionally, quietly, neatly. There was no room for me at that table. That table where Greg smiled, where Meline leaned in for the photo, where my grandchildren raised their glasses in a toast. A table where my name, my face, my seat, my pie, all of it, had no place. I turned. Not in a rush, not in anger, just turned, like a switch flipping in my soul, pulled my coat on, and walked. I passed baggage claim, past the taxis, past the bright signs, and the car rental counters, and the rows of people still being greeted with squeals and laughter and signs. I didn't know where I was going. But I knew one thing, I wasn't going to wait there, not a minute more, for people who had already shown me they weren't coming. I walked outside into the late November chill. The sky was a dull, colorless gray, not angry, just empty. My shoes clicked softly on the pavement. A man pushing a stroller offered me a brief smile. I nodded back. Funny how strangers sometimes are kinder in passing than family who knows your name. At 4:27 p.m., I tried calling Greg just once. It rang and rang. Then voicemail. I left a message. I landed. I'm outside Terminal B by the sign with the airplane on it. I hope everything's all right. I'll wait a little longer. But I already knew. I knew before I hung up. Before the social media app refreshed. Before I opened it again. Just to prove to myself I hadn't imagined it. The caption, the pie, the toast, the absence. And still, I stood there another 20 minutes, knees aching, fingers stiff from the cold. I watched strangers climb into cars that knew their names. Watched a woman in a puffy jacket hand her mother-in-law a hot chocolate and a long, real hug. The mother-in-law looked older than me. Her hands trembled as she gripped the cup, but she was seen. She was claimed. And that hug landed like a sharp truth in the hollow of my chest. I could have cried. A year ago, I would have. 5 years ago, I would have blamed myself, convinced I misunderstood, misread, got the dates wrong, but not now. Now I saw clearly, so I turned again, and I walked. Still no cab, still no plan, just me, a navy blue cardigan, a small suitcase rolling behind me, and the wind whispering, "You're done now, it's enough." Half a mile from the airport, past the shuttle lots and the return rental depot, I spotted it. A squat little diner, with a flickering neon sign, Tina's. The eye blinked in and out, like even it wasn't sure it wanted to be seen. I stepped inside. The bell above the door jingled, an old sound, a real one. Inside, it smelled of hot grease and cinnamon. There were paper turkeys taped to the fogged-up windows, a counter lined with red vinyl stools. A waitress with a tired ponytail looked up and smiled. "Happy Thanksgiving, hun," she said. I blinked, nodded, double quotes, "Same to you." I picked a booth by the window, slid in. The seat was warm, the table clean, the menu sticky with age. She handed it to me and said, "Kitchen's slow today, but we've got turkey and pie." "Pie sounds good," I replied. "What kind? Pumpkin, pecan, or key lime?" "Pumpkin, and some tea, please." "You got it." I didn't look at my phone, didn't scroll, didn't check the notifications. Just sat there, hands flat, on the table, bagged beside me like a quiet, loyal dog. And when the pie came, it was warm. The whipped cream leaned to the side, slightly melted. The tea was strong, slightly bitter, just the way I like it. I took a bite, then another. It was the best piece of pie I'd had in years, not because of the crust, not because of the spices, but because I hadn't made it for anyone else. I ate slowly, deliberately. No one came looking for me, no one called, no one said, "Wait, we forgot Grandma." And somehow, that made it easier to see the shape of what I had always suspected, that I wasn't part of their holiday. Not really. I was an extra seat, a potential favor, a convenience, and I had finally stepped off the list. When the waitress brought the check, she asked, "Want another slice to go?" I stared at her, then smiled. "Yes," I said, "for later." She winked. "Best decision you'll make all day." And I believed her. Outside, the air had chilled. The little white bag with my second slice dangled from my wrist. My suitcase rattled behind me. Still no destination. Still no plan. But also no panic. Just a strange stillness that felt like peace. Just ahead, I saw a blinking sign, Valley Inn, weekly rates available, a budget motel, beige and square and honest. I walked toward it, not because it was the dream, but because it was the next step, and because for once in my life, I wasn't waiting to be rescued. I was rescuing myself. The Valley Inn smelled like old carpet and floor polish done inside the lobby. A man with a stained polo shirt and thick glasses barely looked up from a tiny football game playing on a dusty television. He squinted at me the way people squint at older women traveling alone, unsure whether to pity or ignore. "Need a room?" he asked, already reaching for the form. Double quotes. "Yes, just for one night," I said. "Single." He didn't ask why, didn't ask where I'd come from, or if I was waiting on someone. He just slid the form across the counter. ID and card. As I reached into my wallet, I caught my reflection in the plexiglass divider, hair slightly windblown, cardigan wrinkled. My good shoes, the ones with the tiny heels scuffed from the pavement. I still looked like someone who tried, someone who had expected something different, but my eyes didn't look surprised anymore. Room 114, he said. End of the row. I nodded. The key was on one of those cheap plastic rings, the kind that used to be attached to gas station bathrooms. I took it, thanked him, and walked down the side path toward the room. The outside lights flickered half on, half guessing. Inside, the room was exactly what you'd expect. Muted browns, a queen bed with a sunken center, 2 lamps, one missing, a shade, a bathroom that smelled faintly of bleach, and something older. The heater wheezed when I turned it on, coughing out warm air in gasps. I sat on the edge of the bed, pulled off my shoes, stared at the carpet for a long time. I should have cried. I didn't, not because I was numb, but because I was done. I looked at my phone, 3 missed calls. One text. Greg, Mom, where are you? We thought your flight was tomorrow. No apology, no explanation, just confusion, as if I had made the mistake, as if I had disappeared from their plans. I didn't reply. Instead, I reached into my suitcase and pulled out my notebook, the one I use for grocery lists and thoughts. I never say out loud. I flipped to a fresh page, and I wrote, I am not spare. I am not extra. I am not a side dish at someone else's table. I underlined it twice. The motel light buzzed above me. A hairline crack on the ceiling stretched like a map I hadn't chosen, and still, I was there, breathing. Unbroken. Not rescued, but resilient by morning. The heater had warmed the room to something soft and bearable. I made motel coffee, bitter and thin, but mine. I sipped it in silence. My second slice of pie sat beside me on the nightstand, still in its paper bag. I didn't rush to eat it. It was my proof that I hadn't been erased, that I had fed myself when no one else did. At 7:12 a.m., another text from Greg buzzed in. Mom, I'm so sorry. There was confusion with the pickup. We thought your flight was Friday. Can you come to the house today? The kids really want to see you. The photo said otherwise. The toast, the table, the pie that wasn't mine. No space had been set for me, and yet now he wanted to fix it. Not because I was missed, but because my silence had started to echo. I didn't reply. Instead, I got dressed, brushed my hair, dabbed on lipstick, not for anyone else, but for me, because dignity doesn't require an audience. I checked out of the motel. The clerk didn't make eye contact. Outside, the wind had calmed, the sky was high and pale, that clean November blue that always arrives too late and leaves too soon. I didn't head back to the airport. Not yet. There was something I needed to do first. A mile down the road, tucked between a pawn shop and a tire repair garage, I saw a tiny strip mall with a postal annex. The open sign buzzed in the window. Stepped inside. The young woman behind the counter had chipped red nail polish and offered me a kind smile. Need a stamp? She asked. Double quotes. Yes, and an envelope for Massachusetts. I wrote the name from memory. Emma Wexler, 12 Pond Hollow Lane, Worcester. McGreg's daughter, my granddaughter from his first marriage, 23 now, in nursing school. The only one who still called just to talk. The only one who had ever said to me, Grandma, you're my safe place. I pulled a page from my notebook, and I wrote, Emma, you once told me I was your safe place. That meant more to me than you'll ever know. This Thanksgiving didn't go as planned. I flew across the country for a table I was never meant to sit at. But I found something else. I found space to remember who I am, without waiting for someone else to tell me. I'm okay. Truly, and I hope you are, too. Love, Grandma. I sealed the envelope, bought the stamp, and let the woman behind the counter drop it into the outgoing bin. It made a soft sound. Small, ordinary, but it felt like something real. Like a hand reaching forward instead of clinging back. At 10:35, I booked a ticket home. Same airline, same gate, different woman boarding. The flight wasn't until evening. I had hours to fill, and no one rushing me, so I found a little cafe just a block from the airport. The kind with scratched wooden tables, a wall of chipped mugs, and scones that looked homemade in the best possible way. I chose a window seat, ordered tea and a cranberry orange scone, sat with my notebook and my pen, not to write feelings this time, but to settle into the quiet. No noise, no performance, just stillness. I watched the light shift across the linoleum, watched the barista tie her apron tighter and roll her eyes at the playlist, watched a man help his mother with her coat. The world moved without me, and for once, I didn't feel the need to catch up. Around 4 p.m., the light changed, that warm, golden hour that makes even gas stations look like movie sets. I saw a little boy outside, running toward a minivan, backpack bouncing. He turned, waved, then rushed into the arms of his grandmother. She wrapped him tight. He held on, and I whispered to myself, almost like a prayer, almost like a truth, I deserved that too. The airport was quieter by the time I returned. Less bustle, more silence. People waiting for red-eye flights and reunions that hadn't quite happened yet. My gate was the same. 13 Minneapolis-St. Paul. Except this time, I wasn't looking for faces in the crowd. I wasn't waiting for a text that wouldn't come. I boarded with a calm that felt earned. Row 14, seat C, an aisle. No one beside me, a small mercy. The seatbelt clicked, the plane vibrated, the runway blurred. And as the wheels left the ground, I stared out the window at the city shrinking below. The same one that once promised family and delivered silence. I waited for grief to rise again, for shame, for the old ache that always arrived in the quiet, but none of it came. Instead, I felt rooted, still not at peace yet, but no longer chasing. Halfway through the flight, I turned on my phone to check the time. I told myself it was just that, the time. But of course, the notifications followed like shadows. 4 texts from Greg. 1 voicemail. Mom, I'm really sorry. Please call me. The kids asked where you were. Malene thought you knew dinner was moved up. Can we talk? I didn't open the voicemail. I didn't delete it either. Let it sit, let it wait. The way I had waited. I powered off the phone. When we landed, it was already dark. My little city glowed, quiet, familiar, the kind of glow that doesn't demand attention, but offers something better. Recognition. The shuttle back to the long-term parking lot was driven by an older man with a gray beard and a thermos on the dash. He asked, visiting family? Not exactly, I said. He nodded, said nothing else. Bless him for that. My car was right where I'd left it, porch light on. Mail gathered. The house didn't ask questions. I stepped inside to the smell of lavender and old wood. Home. The radiator ticked awake, kicking out heat in soft metallic bursts. I hung up my coat, rolled my suitcase into the corner, took a moment to just be. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't scroll. I made a cup of chamomile tea, sat at the same kitchen table that had once been full of turkey. Noise, Greg's spilled gravy, Emma's napkin, snowflakes, and Melian's polite distance. Now, just me. And yet it didn't feel empty. It felt returned. I opened the drawer next to the fridge, pulled out the folder labeled Greg. It was thick. Receipts, checks, tuition, payments, mortgage co-signing forms, an invoice from a mechanic, a preschool deposit, promises scrawled in Meline's handwriting. We'll pay you back after the bonus hits. They never did. I sifted through it, not with bitterness, but with clarity. Then I pulled out the thinner folder marked Emma. Birthday, cards, her graduation announcement, a cat photo printed on copy paper, a postcard from Vermont that said, "Wish you were here. Fall is wild and wonderful." My hands paused there, on that sentence. Wish you were here. For a moment, I let the weight of both folders sit on my lap, one heavy with debts and silence, the other light with love. Then I reached for my notebook, and this time, I didn't write feelings. I wrote a plan. The next morning, I was at the bank before it opened. The frost sparkled on the steps. I wore my oldest boots and the navy cardigan. It didn't match my scarf. I didn't care. I was done dressing for other people's comfort. Inside, the teller greeted me with the kind of voice reserved for women like me, kind, cautious, too soft. "Good morning, Mrs. Wexler. How can we help you today? I need to review my accounts." "All of them." She blinked, then called in the manager. A young woman with almond-colored glasses and a clipboard led me into a small office. Her name was Natalie. She looked like someone who meal prepped and ran 5 kiloseconds on weekends. "What can I do for you today, Mrs. Wexler? I want to suspend all automatic payments, starting now." Her fingers paused on the keyboard. "All of them?" "Yes." She scanned her screen. "You have several recurring transfers, family accounts, tuition, car insurance, gifts to keep the charities," I said. "Stop the rest." She looked up. "Something passed between us. A moment of hesitation, the kind people give when they've been taught that older women don't make decisions like this. Do you want to talk about why? No, I said. I've spent enough time explaining myself. She nodded. We finished in silence. When she was done, she asked one last thing. There's a power of attorney on file. Gregory Wexler. Do you want to keep him on? I shook my head. No, revoke it. She didn't flinch, just printed the form. I signed with a steady hand. And when I walked out of that bank, I didn't feel rebellious. I felt real. Outside the bank, the frost had melted into slick ribbons along the sidewalk. I didn't rush. Instead, I walked 3 extra blocks to the corner bakery, bought myself a warm roll wrapped in wax paper, and took the long way home. No destination hurrying me, no one waiting for me but the quiet, and that quiet felt earned, back home. I pulled the pie dish from the sink, washed it gently, dried it slowly, put it away. Maybe someday, I'd use it again, maybe not, but if I did, it wouldn't be for people who left me standing at the curb with my hands full of hope, that afternoon. I called my lawyer, Mr. Altman. He had been with us for decades. Handled everything from our house closing to my husband's will. I knew his office smelled like old paper and lemon polish, and that his receptionist still wore pink lipstick and read paperback thrillers between clients. His voice answered warm and calm. Mrs. Wexler, what can I do for you today? I'd like to update my estate, I said, and I want to set up a trust. He didn't ask why. He didn't have to. People like Mr. Altman, they've seen every kind of family fracture. They've drawn lines where lines never should have been needed. We scheduled an appointment for the next day. When I hung up the phone, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clear. That night, I made myself a bowl of lentil soup. No one else to serve. No one else to ask me for more napkins, more salt, more anything. I lit a candle, just one, set the table for one, sat down in the quiet and took a breath. And for the first time in longer than I could name, I didn't feel like a placeholder. I felt present. The next morning, the sky was flat and gray, that late November hush when winter hasn't arrived, but it's close enough to make the air taste like cold metal. I dressed with care, navy, cardigan, old boots, no makeup, just clean skin, a clear face. Mr. Altman greeted me with the same gentle kindness he always had. Mrs. Wexler, he said, standing. Come in. What are we changing today? My will, I said, and everything tied to it. He gestured to the soft leather chair opposite his desk. The office looked just the same, framed photos of his dog, his sailboat, his daughter's graduation, a space that had weathered lives quietly. I want to remove Greg and Malene, I said, and I want to establish a trust for Emma. I nodded. Only Emma. He didn't raise an eyebrow. He simply began writing. We worked through every detail, property, retirement accounts, the house, even the small life insurance policy I'd held on to all these years, just in case she gets access for education, health, emergencies, I said, but I decide what qualifies until I'm gone. He paused. You've thought this through? Yes, I've been thinking about it for years. I just hadn't let myself write it down. When we were done, he closed the folder with a quiet firmness. I'll have the drafts ready by Friday, he said. We'll notarize it then. Thank you, I said, and I meant it. Back home, I paused by the front porch. A single wind chime swayed, catching the breeze. I stood there for a moment, breathing in the scent of the season, dry leaves, chimney, smoke, the faint sweetness of the last flowers hanging on. Then the phone rang. Greg. Let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, the text arrived. Mom, where are you? We thought your flight was Friday. I swear we didn't mean to miss you. Can we talk? No mention of the photo, no apology for the silence, just confusion, as if I had vanished instead of being erased. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the drawer again, the one with the old notebooks and backup batteries and the little keepsakes. No one else remembered. I found the yellow legal pad. At the top, I wrote, what I've paid for, not just money, but moments, support, silence, one by one. I listed them: transmission repair, Ruby's private preschool deposit, Emma's tuition balance, partial never acknowledged groceries during Malene's bed rest, Greg's medical deductible shoulder injury, Thanksgiving 2017. I hosted. They left early flowers for Malene's mother's funeral, $200 loan during Ruby's summer camp. 4 pages. Not to shame them, but to see the shape of it. I wasn't generous, I was expected. And when the giving paused, so did their connection to me. At 3:17 p.m., my phone buzzed again. Voicemail. Text. Hi Mom, just checking in, hope everything's okay. Let me know when you're free to talk. As if nothing had happened, as if the photo hadn't been posted, as if they hadn't toasted a full house while I stood with my suitcase under the pickup sign. I deleted the voicemail, left the text unread, then I lit the candle. Not for morning, but for stillness. I poured a glass of wine, the good one I'd been saving, set one place at the table, heated the soup from the night before, and I sat, not waiting, not wishing, not apologizing, just sitting, with myself, with the truth. Later that night, I opened my email and pulled up the travel folder. Found the flight confirmation, the one with my Thanksgiving return already completed. I forwarded it to myself, added one sentence to the subject line, proof of departure, and return. I didn't send it to anyone else. I didn't need to, because this wasn't about being seen by them anymore. It was about finally seeing myself, the next morning, light filtered through the curtains with a softness that didn't ask anything of me. No obligations, no expectations, just dawn arriving like it always does in time, with or without witnesses. I made coffee slowly, not the weak kind from the motel machine, not the quick cup I used to drink between tasks, but a full-bodied brew, dark and hot, poured into my favorite chipped mug, the one with a sunflower on the side, the handle just right for my hand. Then I called Mr. Altman again. I've been thinking, I told him. I want to add a clause to the trust. I'm listening, he said. I want Emma to be the sole executor, I said, but I also want to attach a letter, not legal personal, something that makes it clear why I made these choices. Absolutely, he replied. It's called a statement of intent. It's not binding in court, but it gives context. And sometimes, that's the most powerful part. After I hung up, I sat down at the kitchen table and opened my notebook. At the top of the page, I wrote, to whoever is reading this after I'm gone, and beneath that, with a hand that didn't shake, if you're wondering why things were divided this way, let me say clearly, this is not punishment. It's honesty. I've spent a life giving quietly, consistently, but love without respect isn't love, and presence without care isn't family. I chose the one person who saw me before I disappeared. I stopped there. Let the pen rest. Some things deserve to be written slowly. That Tuesday came and went without a call from Emma, but not because she forgot. We'd agreed on it. She had clinical rotations and didn't want to be distracted. I'll call Friday after my shift, she'd promised, and I believed her. But someone else called that morning. Malene. Her name lit up my phone like a warning flare, bright, sharp, and urgent in all the wrong ways. I didn't answer. A minute later, the text arrived. Hi, Irene. Hope you're well. Greg mentioned you've been hard to reach lately. Let's catch up soon. Catch up. As if we were neighbors who'd lost touch. As if I hadn't babysat her children, paid for her mother's funeral, cooked her favorite mushroom casserole every Christmas, even after she told me twist that she didn't like mushrooms. No punctuation where it mattered. No warmth where it counted. That afternoon, like clockwork, came another message, this time from Greg. Mom, Melene tried calling. We're starting to get worried. Can you just let us know you're okay? Worried now. Not when I was alone on the airport curb. Not when the photo of the full house went up without me. Not when I waited in a motel room with a pie in silence for company. No, now. That the silence stretched long enough to make them uncomfortable. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about what my silence meant. Because silence is power. It unravels those who rely on your noise you're giving, your yes, you're making things easy. I turned off the phone. Then I went up to the attic. Not out of drama. Not out of spite, but because Emma had once asked about my old recipe book, the one with apple crisp scribbled in the margins in fading blue ink. The attic smelled like dust and old pine and forgotten Christmases. Insulation curled up like the corners of an aging letter. In a box marked 1990 to 2005. I found the book. Beneath it, letters, dozens of them. Drawings from Emma, thank you notes in crayon, Greg's high school essays. A photo of my husband holding a pumpkin pie, beaming like he'd just won the county fair. I sat down cross-legged on the wood planks and let the past spill into my lap. So many versions of myself, so many roles, so many little pieces I'd packed away to make room for others. and I thought about Greg Gatt, 10 years old, how he used to press his ear to my chest and say, "Your heart is louder than the rain." I thought about the way he cried when I left for work, about how I taught him to tie his shoes using 2 loops instead of 1, because it made more sense to him. I had loved him completely, without conditions, without pause. Maybe I still did, but love doesn't excuse neglect, and forgiveness doesn't always mean return. Not anymore. I placed the recipe book aside, then I reached for my notebook again. This time, I didn't write a letter. I wrote a list. Things I no longer owe, explanations, second chances to people who waste first ones, apologies for being visible, a seat at a table where I was never welcomed, silence. Then beneath that, I wrote another list. Things I still have. My name, my peace, my voice, my home, my granddaughter's voice whispering, "You sound stronger." I tore the page out, folded it once, then taped it to the inside of the cabinet door beneath the sink right beside the dish gloves and the extra sponges. A strange place for strength, but real. That night I made soup again. Lentils, garlic, carrots. I set the table for 1. But this time, I lit 2 candles. Not because someone else was coming, but because I was already here. The soup was warm, the silence was kind, and the candles flickered softly, painting gold on the kitchen walls, like they'd been waiting years to do so. I didn't check my phone. I didn't refresh my inbox. I didn't look toward the door expecting a knock. Instead, I tasted my own peace, bite by bite, spoonful by spoonful. No background noise, no compromise, no ghosts hovering beside me. Just me, present, full. And that night, before bed, I opened my email, not for them, but for proof. I found the travel receipt, buried in a folder marked holidays, Thanksgiving flights, booked, boarded, returned. I forwarded it to myself, and in the subject line, I typed, "Proof of departure and return. No rescue, no reunion, just me." I didn't send it to Greg, or Malene, or anyone else. I didn't need to. They already knew. What they didn't know, what they never imagined, was that I wouldn't wait anymore. That I wouldn't keep showing up at doors that never opened. That I wouldn't fold myself into something smaller just to be allowed inside. The next morning, I called Mr. Altman again. "I want to add something," I told him. "To the trust?" he asked. "Yes, a clause." "What kind of clause?" "Emma is the sole executor, but I want to attach a letter of intent. Not legal, something that says why I did what I did." He paused, then said gently, "You already told me once, but if you want the words on paper, I'll file it with the documents. You just need to write it." "I'm already writing," I said. Same morning, with the soft light pouring in over my kitchen table, I began, "To my family, or what's left of it. If you're reading this, then I'm gone. Not because I vanished, but because I finally allowed myself to stay gone once I stopped being seen. This is not punishment. This is preservation. You mistook my silence for agreement, my showing up for permission, my giving for infinite supply. You forgot that love is not a bottomless well. It's a garden, and you let it rot." I paused, breathed in, then I continued. "I gave you years, holidays, dinners, money, time. I gave you pieces of myself even when I was exhausted, and still, the one who remembered me was the one who never asked for anything. Emma, who called on birthdays, who asked about my garden, who read my notes, who remembered my recipes, who sat beside me without looking at her phone. Emma gets everything because she gave something no one else did, care." That afternoon, the sky turned overcast again, as if the weather had shifted to match the clarity in my bones. No storm, just honesty, just the kind of chill that sharpens you. Later that day, my phone buzzed. "Greg. Again. Mom, we really need to talk. You're not answering, and it's making things worse. I don't know what's going on, but we're worried. Please call me." It wasn't concern. It was the echo of absence. They were used to me chasing, filling, soothing. And now that I'd stopped, they mistook silence for rebellion. But it wasn't rebellion, it was release. I put the phone face down on the counter. Then, I opened the drawer beneath the sink, the one with the yellow paper taped inside. I read my lists again, quietly, to myself. Things I no longer owe. Things I still have. And in that stillness, I felt something new rise inside me. Not anger, not grief, but light. Like a match lit in a dark house. Small, steady, enough to see by. That evening, I made soup again. Same recipe, same table, same candles, but now, it wasn't a ritual of recovery. It was a celebration, a quiet declaration that I was still here, still nourishing. Still choosing, still mine. The next day, I called the notary office, a small storefront near the post office with copy and ship on the sign, and a faded poster of office chairs in the window. The man behind the counter wore a vest with his name on it. Dev, I need to notarize a letter, I told him, handing over my envelope and the trust documents from Mr. Altman. He gave a small nod. Big changes. Yes, long overdue. Dev didn't ask questions, just handed me a pen and guided me through each signature, each date. His voice was slow, measured, like someone who's witnessed countless stories between folded documents and shaky hands. When it was done, I felt it in my chest. Lighter. Not because I'd won anything, but because I'd finally let go of everything I didn't need to carry. Afterward, I stopped at the grocery store, bought a carton of milk, a bag of oranges, a bunch of lilacs, half off the kind that bloom messy but smell like forgiveness. At home, I put the flowers in a chipped vase by the sink. The scent crept through the kitchen like a memory I was finally ready to keep. Then, I took off my coat, folded it with care, and placed it gently on the back of my chair. And for the first time in years, I sat down, not waiting to be claimed, not waiting to be needed, but because I wanted to be here. With me, with all of me. And I was. That afternoon, the phone buzzed again. Greg, again, Mom. We really need to talk. You're not answering and it's making things worse. I don't know what's going on, but we're worried. Please call me. Worried. As if absence was something new for him to feel. As if the weight of being unreachable was foreign. It wasn't that I couldn't respond, it was that I had chosen not to. And choices, I was beginning to realize, were the most honest form of love I could offer myself now. So I did something simple. I turned the phone off. Again. And then I turned to my quiet kitchen. The lilacs bloomed softly, their scent filling the corners like a hymn. The vase sweated gently on the countertop. I moved slowly, intentionally. I made a pot of tea, set a small plate with crackers and goat cheese, and pulled out the worn notepad once again. This time, not to make lists, but to look at what I'd already written, to remember what I'd promised myself. I am not spare, I am not extra, I am not a side dish at someone else's table. And then, for the first time, I added a fourth line. I am the feast. It was corny, a little too poetic, but it felt true. Later, that day, I opened the old cabinet in the hallway, the one that creaked no matter how gently I pulled it, took out the folders again. Greg's folder, Emma's, the new trust documents, the notarized letter of intent. I didn't read them, I just held them, touched the weight of my own decision. And then I locked them away again. Not out of secrecy, but out of completion. Done didn't mean discarded, it meant settled. And that night, I made soup again. 3 days in a row now, different each time, lentils and carrot, then butternut squash, now barley and mushroom. Each one was better than the last, not because of the ingredients, but because of the care. It felt like I was feeding someone I loved, and that someone was me. The next morning the phone rang again. Same name, same number. Greg. I watched it buzz, not with anger, not with guilt, but with the clarity of someone who has nothing left to explain. I let it ring out. Then the voicemail. Mom, I saw the paperwork, from the attorney, the trust, the changes. I figured you would, but I don't understand. After everything, you're just going to cut us off. That word, cut off. As if I was the one who had done the severing. As if they hadn't already unspooled the thread between us long ago, with every missed call, every forgotten invitation, every moment I stood on the outside looking in. And now, silence was a wound too loud to bear, but silence was never the enemy, it was the answer. The next day, I mailed a small box to Emma. Inside, a pair of silver earrings I'd once saved for Ruby, soft cloth wrapping, no letter this time, just a note card. These are yours. Not because you asked, but because you saw me. Wear them when you feel invisible. You never are. Not in this house. Not to me. She called 3 days later. Her voice shook with something sacred. Grandma, she said through laughter and tears. I don't know what to say. You already did, I told her. The day you asked if you could visit. The day you came. I didn't cry, but I felt the heat behind my eyes. That night I lit the fireplace, not for the cold, but for the comfort. Outside, the wind dusted snow across the porch steps, and I watched it fall, each flake a word I never said, each drift a boundary I finally honored, and I thought about all the Thanksgivings that came before, the ones I cooked through pain, the ones I sat through quietly, the ones I was invited to as obligation, not joy. And then this one, the one I gave to myself, no carving knives, no place cards, no forced laughter, just a walk, a diner, a slice of pumpkin pie with whipped cream that leaned too far to the left, and it was enough. No, not just enough, it was right. And if you're reading this, if you've ever been the one who waited, stood at a curb, watched balloons and hugs pass you by, if you've ever held your own softness in a suitcase while the world forgot to claim you, then hear me. You don't have to wait anymore. You can go, you can leave, you can begin again. You don't need their seat, you are the table. And if that sounds lonely, let me tell you, if there's peace here, there's tea steeping, there's soup bubbling on the stove, and a chair, always warm, always waiting, just for you, because you deserve to be remembered, even if it's by your own hands, especially then. The first real snow came overnight. I woke to a world softened in white, the neighborhood blanketed like a forgotten postcard, quiet, crisp, untouched. I stood at the front window, my mug warm in my hands, and watched the flakes drift in the golden hush of morning. There was no plan for the day, no calls to return, no casseroles to deliver, no one expecting me to show up smiling, bearing things I wasn't offered in return. And in that silence, I felt something I hadn't in years. Sovereignty. The kind of peace that doesn't ask for permission. The kind that lives in your bones when you stop begging to be seen. I dressed slowly, the navy cardigan again, the one I'd bought hoping to fit into someone else's family photo. Now I wore it for me. It hung gently at my sides like a flag of my own choosing. I pulled on my boots, still damp from the snow's edge the night before, and stepped outside. The porch lights glowed against the pale sky. My footsteps crunched down the walk. Everything felt deliberate, every breath visible, every movement mine. I didn't need a destination. Not anymore. I walked simply because I could, because no one had told me to, because my time, at last, belonged only to me. Down the block, a man in a parka was clearing his walkway. He looked up and nodded. I nodded back. A quiet moment of neighborly acknowledgement, simple, real, unburdened by history or apology. I walked past the library, the little thrift store with its hand-painted open sign, the cafe where Emma and I had once sat, sharing scones and stories. All these places I'd passed before in a hurry, always rushing towards someone else's need, someone else's schedule. Now, I passed them in presence. Full. Here, enough. When I returned home, my cheeks flushed from the cold, I found a letter, tucked in the door. No envelope, just folded paper, the crease uneven, the ink faint. It was from Greg. I didn't read it right away. I brought it inside, placed it on the kitchen table, and made myself a sandwich first. Turkey and lettuce, no cheese. I sliced an apple, poured a glass of water. I sat, ate, chewed slowly. I finished my meal before I touched the letter, because that's what dignity looks like. To refusing to make someone else's guilt more urgent than your own nourishment. Then, I unfolded the page. Mom, I know I messed up. I know Meline and I both did. The truth is, we've relied on you for so long, I don't think we ever considered what it would look like if you stopped showing up. I'm not asking for money. I'm not even asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking if there's still a place for us in your life, somehow. Maybe not like before. Maybe just enough to start again. Love, Greg. There was no manipulation in the words, but also no clarity, no ownership of specifics. No photo, no airport, just a vague reaching. And I had learned, finally, that vague reaching was not enough. I folded the letter again, placed it in a drawer, and didn't respond, not out of cruelty, but out of respect for myself, and for what I had rebuilt. Later that evening, Emma called. I told her about the letter. What are you going to do? She asked gently. Nothing, I said. I'm done doing everything. She didn't argue. Instead, she said, I mailed you something. It should arrive tomorrow. Sure enough, the next day, a small padded envelope arrived. Inside, a photo. Emma and me on the porch 2 weekends ago, laughing. She'd snapped it with her phone without me noticing. Below the photo, in her tidy handwriting. This is the one I'll frame, the only one that ever felt like home. I held it against my chest, no tears this time, just warmth. It sat on the mantel now, next to the old snow globe from Vermont, beside the chessboard. The vase of lilacs that had begun to droop but still smelled sweet. And I knew this was the legacy I would leave, not the house, not the money, not the cosigned checks, or the sacrifices left unsaid, but the moment someone I loved saw me for who I was, not what I gave. The next Sunday, I baked, not for a holiday, not for guests, not to be remembered. I just wanted pie, pumpkin again. The recipe was mine, the crust slightly crooked, the spices just how I liked them. I set a place, one fork, one napkin. The photo of Emma and me leaned against a small candle, flickering gently. I took a bite, warm, honest, earned, and as I chewed, I closed my eyes and smiled. Because I hadn't just reclaimed my place at the table, I'd built a new one where no one would ever be forgotten, not even me.